On this Sunday night, state of emergency. Newfoundland battles its largest blaze in 60 years as wildfires rage from coast to coast to coast.
The situation has escalated, and it is an evolving situation.
Healthcare closed, from emergency departments to labor and delivery units. More Canadian hospitals shut the door, pulling the plug on pride.
There were people crying, there were people devastated.
Frustration and confusion after the Montreal Pride Parade is canceled at the last minute. Plus, surf's up. Man's best friend is making waves at the World Surfing Championship.
Global National with Bara Nasser. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. 1 week into August and the summer weather is taking a dangerous turn with hot, dry conditions fueling wildfires. Across this country, blazes are burning out of control in southern BC, Yukon and the Northwest Territories, northern Manitoba, and Newfoundland and Labrador. The Premier of Canada's easternmost province says they're battling its worst wildfire since 1961. That entire province is now under a fire ban, with a number of communities in central Newfoundland under a state of emergency. Abigail Bimman has our top story tonight.
A frightening scene in parts of central Newfoundland with 3 out-of-control fires. No evacuations yet, but the province wants people to be ready to move.
With the wind change, we're afraid that there will be significant smoke impact on Grand Falls, Windsor, Bishop Falls, and the surrounding area. As a result, last night, I asked Minister Hogan to declare a state of emergency.
I buttered 1,500 slices of bread to make sandwiches for the firefighters at that time. So it's not frightening to us.
Dealing with a smoky sky at her house in Gander, about 40 kilometers from flames, this fire brings back memories for Linda West Clark of the last major fire crisis in 1961. She's been on Facebook offering up her driveway, cabin, and motorhome to people who need help.
Gander did a lot during 9/11. That's us. We just like to take care of people.
The Defence Minister and Emergency Preparedness Minister tweeted the Canadian Armed Forces will be sent in to help plan and coordinate air transportation and large-scale evacuations if needed. As of Sunday afternoon, details were still being worked out, but the Army plans to be there until at least the 20th.
Certainly over the last, 24, 48 hours, the situation has escalated, and it is an evolving situation.
The Canadian Red Cross is helping people stranded on a highway closed due to fire and smoke and is now setting up a shelter further west.
There's a lot of work that's happening now around the pre-planning and planning in the eventuality that there is an evacuation order.
On the other side of the country, people in BC's interior have been dealing with evacuations for days. 547 properties in Olalla under order to leave, more than 1,000 on alert.
There's a little plume of smoke there. Is that at our place or is it further along? I mean, again, it's very difficult to test, to look at distance.
Saturday night was quiet as temperatures fell, but the danger isn't over.
We expect some challenges today, quite frankly. We're going to have a change in the winds that we haven't seen for a bit of time now.
With people on both sides of the country anxious to have life return to normal safely. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
And for more on those wildfire conditions and if the forecast offers any relief in sight, let's bring in meteorologist Yvonne Schell. So Yvonne, what can we expect?
Jeff, no significant precipitation in the forecast, but we are tracking a slight chance for some showers and even the risk of a thunderstorm for areas near Gander and St. John's overnight tonight. Dries out once again tomorrow. Temperatures will be into the low 20s. A concern across the region, smoke and poor air quality continue, and we've got winds that will be fanning the flames across the region. Southwesterly sustained at 30, but gusts of up to 50, and they'll shift to a westerly wind through the day tomorrow, but still seeing gusts of up to 40 kilometers per hour. On Wednesday, areas near St. John's could be tracking some rainfall. Gander could see a few isolated showers, and then it rebounds and dries out for Thursday, Friday, with temperatures back into the low 20s. As we shift to the fire danger rating, we can see across the region high from most areas, very high to extreme though. That's what we'll be keeping a close eye on. In areas along the west, for BC, also over 50 active wildfires across the region. We're sitting at high to extreme for the fire danger rating. Temperatures are soaring though into the low 30s for the southern interior. We may see a brief break in terms of the temperatures on Wednesday, but it still remains very hot and dry towards the end of the week. Jeff?
All right, thanks, Yvonne. And turning now to concerns about Canadian hospitals, which are struggling to cope with staffing shortages, growing wait times, and in some cases, units closing altogether. Marney Blunt reports on a system under stress and growing fears for the fall.
Hospitals pushed to the brink and staff stretched thin. Pressure is mounting on healthcare systems coast to coast to coast.
We are seeing rural ERs and facilities closing because of lack of nursing staff. Wait times are going up almost on a weekly basis,
impacting both staff and patients alike.
I talked to a nurse the other day who said to me, I spend my entire shift apologizing to my patients.
Patients like Abigail Schellenberg, who waited in a Winnipeg emergency room for 19 hours for an injured ankle.
After waiting 10 hours in the waiting room and 9 in a personal room, I started to feel like I was being forgotten.
Just one experience in a healthcare system struggling to keep up. In rural Manitoba, staffing shortages are forcing emergency rooms to decrease hours or in some cases close altogether. A similar scenario in several parts of British Columbia, including the West Kootenays. In New Denver, the small village's ER operating hours have been reduced indefinitely.
We need to get back to a bit more community-based management to oversee these troubles that we have.
In Alberta, physician shortages forced the Fort Saskatchewan Hospital to close its obstetrics unit for at least 2 weeks. That means pregnant patients will need to drive to another hospital about half an hour away. The problem is also plaguing facilities in major Canadian cities. In Ottawa, Montfort Hospital closed its emergency department overnight this weekend amid what it calls an unprecedented shortage of nurses. Experts worry the situation could deteriorate even more this fall with another looming wave of COVID-19.
Traditionally, that's also when flu season kind of starts sort of around late October, November sort of time frame, and that has historically had impact on our acute care facilities as well.
A reason why Carr says we need to proceed with caution to avoid an unwelcome added stress on a healthcare system already pushed to the brink. Marney Blunt, Global News, Winnipeg.
A day that was meant to mark a celebration in downtown Montreal ended in chaos and confusion, just hours before tens of thousands of people were expected to gather for the city's first Pride Parade since 2019. The event was abruptly canceled, leaving many demanding answers, including the mayor. Dan Spector has that story.
On Sunday, downtown Montreal was supposed to be full of color, love, and joy. Instead, there was confusion, anger, disappointment.
There were people crying, there were people devastated.
Montreal's Pride Festival was set to culminate with its annual parade, the past two canceled due to COVID-19. Tens of thousands of people were expected to take over René Lévesque Boulevard at 1 p.m. But just after 9 a.m., Montreal Pride announced online the event was canceled due to a lack of personnel to ensure security.
We came from Paris for the parade.
I'm speechless and baffled.
Matthew Velosa-Quintero says his Afro Pride group spent countless hours and tens of thousands of dollars handcrafting costumes and creating a float for the parade.
We have people coming down from Ottawa, from Toronto. We're talking about almost 2,000 people that are supposed to be parading behind a truck.
People are showing up last minute, and we have to announce the bad news, and it's really sad.
This group included refugees from countries where homosexuality is illegal, hoping to experience their first ever Pride Parade.
This one's being canceled, it's like, it's difficult for them.
Also taken aback by the news, Montreal Mayor Marney Blunt.
I was shocked this morning that decision was made without even trying to find a solution, maybe even talking to us, because that's what we do. We troubleshoot things.
We sincerely apologize.
Montreal Pride Director Simon Gamache tells Global News he learned when he woke up his organization did not have enough people to safely run the parade, and the cancellation is his team's fault.
We have to close streets and all of that to assure the safety and the safety of all participants. And unfortunately, we just don't have all the resources to do that.
Many we spoke to didn't buy it.
They know before, for sure, so I don't trust him.
You cannot tell me you didn't know this prior.
By afternoon, hundreds of devoted attendees arranged their own unsanctioned parades down St. Catherine Street, bringing lots of smiles. But organizers will be entering a tough week of questions and damage control. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
Israel and Palestinian militants have just agreed to a ceasefire after Egypt brokered successful peace talks. The truce begins at 11:30 tonight and ends 3 days of deadly violence after Israel launched air strikes on Friday, citing an imminent threat from the Islamic Jihad movement. At least 43 Palestinians have been killed, including children and 2 of the militant group's senior commanders. Hundreds of rockets were fired towards Israel in response. It marks the most serious flare-up between Israel and Gaza since an 11-day conflict in May of last year. The U.S. Senate has just passed a sweeping $430 billion bill designed to counter climate change, raise corporate taxes, and tackle health care costs, all despite being opposed by every single Republican. The bill salvages a key part of President Joe Biden's domestic agenda ahead of upcoming midterms. The measures aim to lower the cost of prescription drugs and tighten enforcement on corporate taxes. And it will also include the largest ever federal effort on climate change, injecting nearly $400 billion into green energy programs. The bill now heads to the House of Representatives, where it's expected to pass in a vote on Friday. The global fight against climate change suffered a serious setback this past week after China announced it was halting its cooperation with the United States. The move follows U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which sparked anger and a flurry of Chinese military exercises. Those drills in and around the Taiwan Strait were supposed to end today, but the Chinese government just announced another round. Jennifer Johnson has more on the souring relations between superpowers.
China is escalating its threats against Taiwan, announcing a new round of military drills expected to continue until at least mid-August. The White House is urging peace as tensions rise.
We'll keep our channels of communication with China open, with the intent of avoiding escalation due to misunderstanding.
Concerns are rising that China's increasing aggression toward Taiwan may lead to an all-out invasion. Taiwan's leaders say the threat has been there for decades, but they are fortifying their defenses.
If you have a kid being bullied at school, you don't say you don't go to school. You try to find a way to deal with the bully. And that's exactly what Taiwan is doing.
China's show of force, its strongest in more than 25 years, came in the wake of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to the self-ruled island. U.S. leaders called China's fury an overreaction.
What President Xi decided to do was manufacture a crisis over Pelosi's visit. He's seeking an unprecedented third term as leader of China, and this is saber rattling and, chest thumping.
China has also called off planned talks with the U.S. on a range of defense matters, international crime, and even climate change issues. On Thursday, the White House summoned China's ambassador for a formal rebuke, and lawmakers say they won't back down.
We are going to stand by our friends, our partners, and our allies, and clearly Taiwan is one of those. Being provocative is not us, it's the Beijing government.
But nothing is stopping Beijing from ordering a new round of drills in the seas encircling Taiwan, an island China sees as its own. Chinese officials promise these exercises will become a regular thing, as Taiwan and the U.S. urge China to stand down. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Coming up, adopt a grandparent. The online campaign supporting the elderly in Ukraine. 6 more ships filled with badly needed grain and sunflower oil left Ukraine's ports today. The latest sign that a deal struck with Moscow to allow food exports safe passage appears to be holding. Millions of tons of grain have been stuck in Ukraine since Russia's invasion, but Moscow has now even allowed an international commercial ship to arrive in Ukraine's waters, the first since the war began back in February. Though analysts also warn that Russia is now moving troops and equipment towards some of those southern port cities to stave off a Ukrainian counteroffensive. While many Ukrainian civilians have fled their homes, some can't escape, including the elderly and those living with disabilities. Many confined to their homes are now left starving and alone. Crystal Gamansing reports on a unique program designed to help Ukraine's most vulnerable.
Sitting in her wheelchair, Svetlana Sevchenko smiles warmly. It's been a long night, she explains. 4 rockets hit nearby, and she hasn't slept.
My homeland is Kharkiv region, but there is no one.
Her cat, Busia, her only companion. Her husband and son died years ago. Twice a month, a volunteer from Kharkiv hub swings by and drops off a small plastic bag with a few items. There's not much inside, yet she's grateful. Her parting words lead to tears.
Take care of your mothers if you have one. Mothers are your guardian angels.
Elderly people are extremely vulnerable in this war, especially in areas under heavy shelling like Kharkiv. The World Bank estimates the number of Ukrainians living below the national poverty line could reach 70% this year. It was 18% in 2021. Every week, volunteers deliver an average of 1,500 small parcels. Some drivers have had their cars struck with shrapnel. Still, they get behind the wheel. Local businesses are supporting the effort along with UNICEF, but the coordinator of the Kharkiv hub says there are too many elderly and disabled residents suffering.
There are so many stories that can hurt you. It's hard. War, it's terrible things, and there are many of terrible things.
To extend their reach, the volunteers launched Rescue Me. Sponsors can read different profiles and pick someone to rescue, ensuring they'll receive food and medicine.
Many of the people receiving these packages just aren't able to get out. This particular apartment is 5 floors, and the woman lives at the very top. It is hot, and she's been inside for months.
Of course, it's important. We want to eat every day.
Ukraine does provide financial assistance to elderly and disabled people, but it's not much. Those with moderate disabilities, for example, receive roughly 2,500 hryvnia per month. That's less than 90 Canadian dollars.
It is desirable to help. Now, for 8 people, this bag must be divided.
Survival for many in Ukraine extends far beyond the front lines. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, Kharkiv.
Still ahead, virtually painless. Doctors are using VR to manage patients' anxiety and comfort. Welcome back. Virtual reality is often thought as something used by gamers, but Canadian physicians and surgeons are now turning to the technology as an alternative to narcotics, as a means of treating pain and anxiety. Jamie Morocco reports on efforts to make VR in medicine a reality.
And we've got a tour of Victoria Falls today, which is going to be lovely scenery.
It's a trip without any travel.
It is one of the biggest rivers in Africa.
Or any drugs. Instead of narcotics, plastic surgeon Dr. Ryan Austin offers a virtual reality headset to patients undergoing minor surgeries.
It gives them the chance to disconnect from that visual or auditory stimulus so that they can have a much more pleasant experience overall.
It's that distraction, some experts say, that dulls anxiety and possibly even pain. Dr. James Clarkson has used VR in his practice since 2006.
When we've studied it, we found it's those patients, about 30% of them, that have an anxiety disorder, that give us the highest reduction in anxiety.
Research, new and ongoing, also indicates exposure to augmented reality may reduce acute and chronic pain for some patients. But the technology is new, and there's no clear consensus whether the effect produced is physiological or psychological. Experts at the University of Calgary are trying to determine how VR stacks up against pharmaceuticals in cancer patients trying to manage their pain.
If we can, show that it is just as effective or even, similarly effective to medications, then it could be approved.
Last summer, Health Canada approved VR software for use in radiology. And a couple of months later, the US FDA gave the green light to its first ever VR device used to help with chronic pain. Austin has only had this equipment for a couple of months. And while he says there are advancements to be made, it's a viable alternative to expensive and potentially risky sedation.
The patient benefits, I think that the surgeon benefits, I think that the entire medical team benefits, and as well the system benefits by not having to take that patient to the operating room.
Technology that could reduce wait lists and patient discomfort. Jamie Morocker, Global News, Toronto.
Next, walking the walk. Canadian race walker Evan Dunphy's record-setting performance at the Commonwealth Games.
He will be Commonwealth champion. The 10,000 metre champion for Canada in the wars is Evan Dunphy.
Another gold medal for Team Canada at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, England, as Evan Dunphy seizes first place in the men's 10-kilometre race walk. The 31-year-old from British Columbia also smashed his own Canadian record. Canada now has 26 gold medals with 91 overall. Those games wrap up tomorrow. Well, any pet owner can tell you that dogs are great swimmers. They call it the doggy paddle for a reason. But a group of canines in California are taking their aquatic skills to new heights. Dozens of dogs competed in the World Dog Surfing Championships. Yes, you heard that right. They competed in categories according to their size, as well as tandem events. Dogs are judged on multiple factors, including length of ride, technique, confidence, and wave size.
I can't even explain his passion for it and how much he enjoys it. He has such a good time. People just love it. And we just like to keep it positive, have a good time, make people happy. And we just really have a great time.
Oh, it's an awesome bonding experience. She was found in the parking garage, so she was scared of a lot of stuff as a puppy. And we just started going to the beach. She jumped on one of the surfboards, and I was like, yeah, let's give it a try.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is the Halifax Town Clock, a federal heritage site. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.